Good morning, everybody who has joined so far. It's a beautiful sunny day in Parkmore, Johannesburg. I think the government regulations say that you're supposed to park more and drive less, so we're all doing what we're supposed to do. There's not much room for silliness in law. Judges don't really like it when you crack jokes or are silly. So I've always had a passion for writing. I love writing for my job, but I decided to combine the silliness and the love for writing into this book, Tale of Wingnut, which we're going to take you through shortly. And I actually originally wrote the book for my wonderful nephew, Matteo. And once I had finished writing it, I decided to partner up with Nutt, who is a good friend of mine and who is an incredible artist. And so was the obvious choice for this book to do the illustrations. And I'm sure you're going to absolutely love her work, because the book would be absolutely nothing without the illustrations to give life to the words. Now, Wingnut was my absolutely legend of a tomcat, and everybody who knew him absolutely loved him, and this book is also an ode to him. I hope that it also immortalizes him to an extent. And we are super proud of what we have accomplished today.
Hi everyone, it's a wonderful opportunity for us to share the story with you, and it's our first reading live, so this is a very special morning. I was thrilled when Paul Michael gave me the opportunity to work in collaboration with him, and we explored our wonderful neighborhood for inspiration, right down to the fauna and flora, the hardy-dars, the flowers, and everything in between. I'm a mother of two, and two little humans, and 5 furry animals who I adore, and I do hope that you enjoy the story with us.
So hopefully on all of your screens is the front cover of Tale of Wingnut. That is Wingnut, quite obviously, and he is surrounded by the beautiful foliage of Parkmore. Sir Wingnut Tinklebottom was the poshest of the cats. He even wore his bow tie when he chased the local rats. Never would you meet him with a whisker out of place, and he held his conversations at a gentlemanly pace.
He kept his cool in alleys and at the tops of lofty trees. He loved the views from up there and the constant gentle breeze. Amongst his friends and family, he was a well-respected Tom, from little Minky Marmite to his human's loopy mom.
His coat, it was a patchwork like a Frisian dairy cow, and when questioned where he'd gotten it, he would always answer, meow. He wouldn't like you knowing of his crooked L-bent tail, so keep it to yourself, this his one and only fail.
He spent his days a wonder in his massive territory, where he'd often stop by Granny's for a spot of Earl Grey tea. But please don't get this right or wrong, this Nutt's no push around. He always came out right on top when wrestling Uncle's hound.
One day, our Nutt opened his eyes, like clockwork, right at dawn. He stretched his legs and cleared his lungs with a toothy lion yawn. Look at his mane. Some breakfast and a milky drink from stylish kitty bowls saw our hero Kit-Kat decide upon that day's mischief goals.
Out of the house and up a tree had Wingnut on the wall. He looked around and wondered too when next that he would crawl. With marble eyes, Minx watched him from the leafy yard below, her jet black coat so shiny that her body seemed to glow.
Now look at our cheeky hardy-dar here. He features throughout the book, so keep an eye out for him. From high up top, our wingy scoped and saw the neighbor's sleeping dog. He confidently closed the gap with a jump and easy jog. Before the mutt could raise an eye, our cat was in the air. He bounced right off the pooch's back with classic feline flair.
A howl was raised, but Wingy Wings was halfway across the lawn. His tail was up, and to the side, his test of canine brawn. In 3 big leaps, he'd crossed the space and dove under a shrub. Although he'd gotten on in years, he was as nimble as a cub.
The gardener saw this confused scene and launched a rusty rake. He didn't like shenanigans at all, for goodness sake. It flew an arc and missed our cat and whacked the poor dog's rear. As Poochie yowled and Gardner scowled, the Nutt was in the clear.
He landed lightly, next yard down, and shook his fur coat clean. All part of a cat's day's work, there's little he'd not seen. Granny Button saw him now and flashed her false teeth wide. Would Kitty like some tuna fish? She asked, swelling with pride.
He gulped the fish and schmoozed her leg and went off on his way. He had not time for chit-chat, as he'd more to do that day. Through Granny's gate and crossed the road, now dodging hurried cars, our Wingnut couldn't help but think how he'd gotten all his scars.
Up the road and round the bend and past the traffic lights had Wingnut Tinklebottom spot some ladies dressed in tights. The yoga mums had all arrived and were laying down their mats. They came for peace and quiet and were not expecting cats.
Notice the kitty cats on the yoga outfit and also the detail in the traffic light. Meigs is a genius. He waited for their settling down and for the pretzel pose. Several ladies all scrunched up, noses against toes. In one great sweep, he'd knocked them all so that they tumbled down. A crazy lady chased him back, her makeup like a clown.
It dawned on him that quite nearby was one of his top places. He felt right now like friendly chats and warm, familiar faces. And so he dove right through a hedge and into a new yard. He was Kitty after all. Such things were not that hard.
Three little humans were right there, playing on a swing. They spotted him and screamed with joy, "It's Wing! It's Wing!" Our posh cat swaggered over with his skew tail held up high. He knew these little people, so he needn't have been shy. And these little people are my nephew over there and Meigs' two kids over here. And this is actually a spread from Meigs' beautiful garden in Parkmore, where the three of them regularly play together.
"Hello, Wingnut," cried the girl atop her Wendy house. "Wingy wings," cheered the boys. "Have you caught a mouse?" Our kitty climbed halfway up the jacaranda tree, and from there gave a meow to all in expression of his glee.
This caused a mommy to emerge from inside a room. "Come here, Wingy," mommy said, "I'll give you a groom." So Wings obliged, ran to her and was treated to a brush. With friends like these, he never needed to be in a rush.
The welcome treat of catnip saw our kitty on his way. His outstanding plan for mischief meant he simply couldn't stay. He meowed them all his wishes for another visit soon and hopped the fence, purring to his favorite kitty tune.
A passing yellow lorry saw his plan fall into place. He jumped on board and relished at its satisfying pace. On it trundled through the streets of his familiar burg until he dropped right off again to the corner curb.
The building site was one at which he'd have to watch his back. So many things were going on that he'd easily catch a whack. And so he dove and dodged and jumped in avoidance of the clatter. He climbed a pipe and looked down on the scene from in a gutter.
A battered dozer rolled along, churning clouds of smoke. The driver was the man in charge, and Wingnut knew this bloke. They'd had their run-ins times before when Wings had tried to greet. The man was not a cat lover, caring only for concrete.
This building had been going up for what seemed to Wings like ages, and Wingy knew for certain that Boss paid his men poor wages. The guy had once missed Wingnut with the throwing of some bricks, so our kitty chose today to pull the grandest of his tricks.
He waited in the gutter till the men were closing shift, knowing that to get this right would mean he must be swift. As Big Boss flopped his large girth down and took off all his gear, Wingnut crouched his body low and started stalking near.
He stank of weeks-old sausages so that Wings could hardly breathe, but do not think he was put off, a plan yet up his sleeve. The man, Wings knew, would walk from here and to his fancy ride, and it was this situation through which Wings would win his pride.
He scuttled up and hid himself in the cabin of the crane, whilst Bossman wobbled to his car, sweating with the strain. From high above, Wingy saw the car pulling away. He pushed the knob and swung the crane right towards his prey.
Bossman saw his rooftop down, the bucket overhead. He'd stopped his car to shout at men, his features turning red. Wings flicked a switch, grinned a grin, and a cable started winding. He locked his eyes with the man below and could tell his rage was blinding.
The bucket, up above the car, had slowly started tipping. The sludge inside would pour out soon and was already dripping. The boss inside had lost his cool, struggling to get out, being hampered by his panic and the symptoms of his gout.
And so the bossman's car was filled up with his favorite thing, all because he'd thrown some bricks at our special wing. Concrete poured out from the door as the boss bailed clear. The scene was seen from all around and caused the men to cheer.
A cough, a splutter, and a curse had Bossman at the base. He started charging up the crane with terrifying pace. But Wingnut wasn't worried, as he'd had this whole thing planned. He knew how far above his burb the distance to home spanned.
And so he leapt off the crane right into the haze. The sun was disappearing now. He'd ride its final rays. He spread himself into a wing and eased into a glide. The thought of seeing Minky soon was his homeward guide.
And this is my favorite spread in the whole book. You see the bats and Wingnut over Parkmore and Santon City in the background and its surrounds. He soared above the rooftops of the homes he knew so well. The overflying kitty caused the kids to point and yell. His whiskers fluttered on his face. He held his small ears flat. If you'd seen him flick above your home, you'd have thought him a large bat.
He swooped and steered towards his home and its garden's tallest oak. He flared the skin between his legs and slowed things down a stroke. He landed lightly on a branch and caused the leaves to sway. Minky smiled right up at him, her love back from his day.
Warm back inside, with belly full, curled on his human's lap. Where have you been? What have you done, my little furry chap? He closed his eyes and had a yawn and fell into a doze. What he'd do on his next day out, only this kitty knows.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. So that's the reading of Tale of Wingnut. We really hope that you enjoyed yourself. We want to send our sincere love to all of you and thanks for joining us today. We encourage all of you to support us by, of course, buying the book. You can email us at info@taleofwingnut.com. Check us out on Facebook. Check us out on our website, which is www.taleofwingnut.com. And please also tell your friends and family about this if you've enjoyed yourself. And finally, from me, before Meek says goodbye, I'd like to send a message to the kids who have joined us today, which is to never lose your imaginations, because an imagination is so important in every aspect of life. And never lose your love of reading, because getting your nose into a good book can improve any foul mood, it can improve any dreary day, and it can certainly get you through the toughest of times. So keep up the reading and keep up the joy for fiction and stories. Over to you, Mix.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Paul Michael. And thank you so much for joining us. And I do hope that you have the perfect Saturday and that you lock in your creativity and you share your imagination with your family and friends. It's the best thing and brings pure joy to your lives. We're sending all our love. Thank you. And enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Enjoy, everybody. Cheers for now.
Bye.